And if I had truly loved it, I wouldn't mind waking up at 6 a.m. for all the workouts and all the practices and stuff like that. But I didn't truly love it. So it turned into a hassle to do that every day. And I woke up dreading days. And when you get to that point, I just don't think, whether it's even in your career and anything you do in life, if you're at that point where you're waking up and you're not looking forward to the next day, I think you should come to the realization that's probably not what you should be doing.
Hey there, high performers. This is Dr. Josh Funk. In this podcast, I will be interviewing people from the sports and business world who have experienced hardship and come out on top. Through their challenges, strategies, and mindset, I hope that it will give you the tools you need to perform for life. Hey everybody, Dr. Funk here. I'm pumped to bring to you my brother, Jake Armstrong, on his 22nd birthday. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you. Good to be here. And yeah, I guess I'm starting to get old.
Man, the first birthday that really doesn't mean anything.
Yep. I guess it's a beginning of a long line of meaningless birthdays.
That's a good way to put it. For those of you out there who know me very well, yes, I do have two brothers named Jake Armstrong and Jake Funk. I also have two other siblings, my sister Jacqueline and my brother Jordan. I grew up in what I would call now the standard American family. People ask me all the time, hey, who's the real brother and who's the real whatever? They're brothers and they're sisters, but if you want to get technical, I do have 3 half-brothers and 1 half-sister. This is Jake, who we share my lovely mother, Sharon, with. And going to dive in a little bit to just the culture of our family growing up, largely centered around sports. Obviously, a balance of sports and academics. Wanted to make sure that we were always told to be, well-rounded individuals, emphasis on school first, allowing us to play sports, but sports being a big part of our self-identity growing up and just kind of what that process was like. So, Jake, I mean, it's kind of crazy to look back on this, but you were part of the first generation of what I would call this big wave of the push into travel or club sports. Talk a little bit about what things were like for you just growing up as a young person and some of your experiences there.
Yeah, like you said, there was that huge push into travel sports at the time. I remember at the tail end, I think you did a little bit of travel sports towards the end of your athletic career. But when I was growing up, specifically, if you were excelling in a sport, they were trying to push you into either travel or beltway or club sports. So for instance, I did wrestling, football, basketball, baseball, and lacrosse, all to travel levels, starting at a very young age. I started playing club lacrosse in 5th grade, Rising Stars basketball in 4th, beltway wrestling, and just from a very young age, there was a lot of push into that next level where parents were already being able to see their kids earning scholarships from that young of age. And looking back on it, it was kind of crazy, but it was effective in kind of bringing the next level out of us. I think it was effective in taking us to the next level, but at times there were challenges when you would go to school and you drive to 3 different practices in one day, and then you go to bed and you wake up and kind of do the same thing over again. And I remember being like 10 years old, like, this is kind of crazy. And at that age, kind of realizing that and looking back on it, it was a little crazy. But yeah, it was definitely the beginning of that wave.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, sitting back here, I look at, club sports. For me, I started club sports as a junior in high school with regards to the sport that I played in college, lacrosse. I did do beltway wrestling. So I had a small, brief time period of that in middle school, which was the travel wrestling that I believe is still prevalent in this area. But it definitely wasn't nearly the push that it is nowadays, where you're almost seeing a lot of the rec programs disappear as a result of the push towards, not only travel and club, but the privatization of youth sports, less of the town teams and more of the bigger picture, multiple town or region-based teams. We grew up in a household, for everybody that isn't aware, where it focused a lot on different season, different sport, and my parents were tremendous advocates for multi-sport. They did not allow us to specialize in a single sport, but yes, there were some times where we did play multiple sports in a given season. God bless our mom. I don't know how she did it.
She was superwoman.
Yeah,
she would run around with her head cut off all the time.
That is an understatement when you talk about superwoman, just everything that she was juggling and then how involved she would be, like from a team mom standpoint or in the school side of things. So hats off to you, Mom, just with regards to everything that you did for us growing up. I think a lot of times the push into that world, there was challenges. Sometimes it was a balance between coaches. It was a balance between what you were able to achieve academically. I think you probably saw this a lot more when you got to high school, but the demands of the multi-sport athlete and how sometimes that can encroach on other seasons and maybe the coaches aren't quite seeing eye to eye. I mean, talk to me a little bit about your experience there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember that specifically during basketball season. That was the winter was always a big time for football workouts. And I specifically remember my coaches for basketball and not really lacrosse, but football specifically impeding on basketball season. My coach pushing for me to, hey, are you sure, is basketball really going to take you anywhere? I think you should take off and do work out. And the times just interfering. And then when I finally got back to football workouts after lacrosse season, usually I would often find myself behind people that were able to be there throughout the entire winter and spring. So maybe they were running plays and I would be not as knowledgeable. So maybe I'd at the beginning fall behind on the depth chart and certain things like that. I definitely saw struggles between being a 3-sport athlete and then also just the physical toll. As soon as one would start after another, your people come in maybe a lot fresher than you and they've been able to work out for months. And that was another toll of that. But overall, I think it was a good experience, better than focusing on one sport, because I always think that my sports helped out with each other, like basketball helped out in lacrosse and things like that. I think it was overall a beneficial experience to play 3 sports in high school.
Yeah, and you get a tremendous amount of exposure to new situations, new coaches, new teammates. I mean, there's definitely can be a lot of positives from it, but I think it really is a fine line between too much activity, especially too much structured activity, and then not also having that free play activity that many of us, it's crazy to say this being 12 years older than you, but I think we spent more time just running through the neighborhood where we didn't have so much structure all the time, especially when you talk about adding in club sports on top of your high school sports. So it is. I mean, it's just kind of wild to just see the difference between a little over a decade. But when I think of specifically with you and then where your sports career, as we'll call it, spent a lot of focus in the high school years, it was club lacrosse. And whether that was because myself and Jacqueline, who is our, shared sister, also played college lacrosse. I think you loved lacrosse, but we found out a little bit later that maybe the love was more like a like. It was something that you enjoyed doing. It was something that we shared as a family. But talk to me a little bit about your process, especially being the fact that you did sign a national letter of intent and it was to play lacrosse at the Division I level. So talk to me a little bit about maybe the last few years of high school and just kind of what you were thinking and what was going on at that point in your life.
Well, like you said, growing up with you and Jacqueline being a decent amount older than me, I would go to your games and I can remember being young and just wanting to grab a lacrosse stick. And from being 5 years old, loving lacrosse for my entire life, all throughout my youth up until maybe sophomore year of high school, I started to notice it felt like it was turning into more of a job than something I was really liking because it was year round. We had fall, we had winter, we had spring and summer. And it was intensive, and I started to fall a little out of love with it, and I would honestly enjoy playing in my backyard more than I would practice and stuff like that a lot of the time because it was just turning into a job a little bit. And like you said, I always liked lacrosse. I never stopped liking it, but I think I did stop loving it around that time. And I think it was really late senior year where I really started thinking, am I doing this because I feel like I have to, because I've been working towards it for my entire life? Or do I really love it? And I started to realize that it was the former, but it was a hard decision or hard thought process to go to because, like I said, I felt like my entire life was built up to this goal of playing at the Division I level. So it was very hard to tell anyone about it, honestly, and even try to make that decision eventually.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that I remember you bringing up at some point, and we'll get into the story and kind of when the decision was made, but the financial ramifications and the time investment of parents into their kids. And that almost serving as an external pressure for the kids when they're trying to make these decisions that are in the best interest of their self. Instead of making a decision solely based around, hey, I love this, this is what I want to do, they're also making a decision potentially because there was this investment in them, both in time and money. So, talk to me a little bit about that.
There is the external pressures for sure. There is, you think, there's also not, time and money specifically. My mom spent years and years driving me to these tournaments and paying for me to go to all of these camps, taking me on all these recruiting trips, flying. They flew me down to Florida, down to North Carolina, different states, and all building up to what I never really communicated to them well, might not have been what I really wanted. And so there is that pressure, and especially if it's been going on for years, since fifth grade in my case, if there's all that time and money invested over a 7-8 year period, there is a lot of external factors that come into making a decision like that.
So you got to a point, senior year of college, committed to UMBC, you signed your national letter of intent. You went through senior year, you had an amazing senior year. I actually was Jake's coach for 3 years of high school, in addition to obviously spending time with him from not only the backyard at young ages, helping out with rec coaching, club coaching through our time at Lax Factory. And you, worked out a great deal. Your summer before your freshman year of college, you were in great shape. And then eventually we got a phone call, right? And the phone call was, hey, this isn't quite what I think I want to be doing. I'm not sure if playing Division I college lacrosse is in my future.
Yeah, well, first of all, I can't thank you enough for making the sacrifices you did for being my coach throughout high school. I know I've communicated that to you, but I really do appreciate that. But no, there was, I think that summer leading up, I started to feel like I could fall back in how I felt early in high school, because there was all the build up to it. We were working out. I was training for, the run test I knew that was coming up. I was practicing on my stick skills, on my dodging, all this stuff. And I really felt like I was falling kind of back into how I used to feel. And the first couple weeks at UMBC, it was kind of the same way. I initially felt pretty good about it, but after probably about a month or so there, it started to feel more like a job again. And if I had truly loved it, I wouldn't have mind waking up at 6 a.m. for all the workouts and all the practices and stuff like that, but I didn't truly love it. So it turned into a hassle to do that every day, and I woke up dreading days. And when you get to that point, I just don't think, whether it's even in your career and anything you do in life, if you're at that point where you're waking up and you're not looking forward to the next day, I think you should come to the realization that's probably not what you should be doing.
Yeah, if you're not extremely passionate about what you're doing every day, I would agree. You have to make a choice.
Yeah.
I can remember that phone call and remember driving up. I said, hey, stay exactly where you are. And we went and we literally hung out at Hard Rock for probably 2-3 hours in a booth. And we just caught up and we talked a little bit and we said, hey, all right, well, if you're not going to do this, what are we going to do? We might have come up with a plan there in the booth, but the next maybe year or two, it was still challenging for you, right? You had gone through this process of, hey, me being an athlete and playing college lacrosse, it's such a significant part of your identity. Talk to me a little bit about that time period and then how you're able to find out what you enjoy doing, which obviously is leading to hopefully a really, really good career in the field that you've chosen.
Yeah, so after I made that decision, there was a little bit of an identity crisis. I don't know, crisis, but there was a little part of my life where I've always been a sports player. I played sports my entire life. That's kind of always who I was. So when you take that away, it was a little weird for a while. I didn't really know what I was great at anymore. I didn't have something that I was better than most people at and really excelled at in life. So there was a period where I kind of just floated, I would say, for a little bit. Might have had a little too much fun in school. When you take away the structure, it's oftentimes hard to build that structure for yourself, especially whether it's a workout regimen, whether it's waking up early, whether it's just being healthy in general and being a productive member of society. And sometimes it does take a little bit to get back to that point where you can find something that you're passionate about again and really good at and really be able to build your life around it and gives you something to get out of bed in the morning. But there's definitely a couple months to a year, I would say, where I was kind of trying to find myself again, which I think is something that a lot of people can, whether you play 4 years of sports and you all of a sudden it ends and you're in the real world, or you're a professional athlete and it ends and you're thrown in the real world. I think it can apply to a lot of situations. But there was a year where it was hard to kind of find my identity again. But I went back to things that I had always knew I was good at, that I might not have been able to put as much time into when I was younger, because I knew that because I was